I do indeed. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to sunny South Africa and a very hot day with a very hot cat. My name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Davy, who's back from holiday. Davy, did you have a nice holiday?
A lovely holiday.
That's excellent. I haven't actually been with Davy since March, so I'm thoroughly looking forward to our afternoon together, and especially because we've already got spots, which is a fantastic thing. So we've got little Hosana, who is back on Djuma for the first time in a very long time. He's found himself all the way into the central parts of Djuma. He's right in close to the Mulawati on Vulture's Nest, and he's sitting there very uncomfortable at the moment for a reason. The reason is that sitting up in the tree above him is a carcass. So he's managed to find himself a little impala kill that he's gone after and will manage to get himself, and he's hoisted in the tree, and that's why he is so uncomfortable. So it's a bit difficult with the light, but you can see the head just dangling on the right side of the frame. There we go. That's the head dangling over the branch. Bit difficult to see. Now this is live. It is interactive. So if as happy as I am to see Hosana and want to tell me about how happy you are, remember hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or YouTube chat if you do want to get hold of us. But what a way to start our afternoon. In fact, this cat was actually found by Herbie today. Herbie was out and about and he saw the carcass hanging in the tree and managed to find Hosana, and so that's really good for us because it's made our life very easy, and it also means that there's a chance for Steve to try and go and see if he can find the other young prince of Djuma, and that is Tamba. So we're in a situation where hopefully we'll have both of our young boys on a drive, and it's been a long time since we've had those two around, and since we've been able to watch the two young men of this area and see how they go about their business. Now I'd imagine that we're going to see Hosana being very sleepy and very quiet for the first part of the afternoon. Dave, you say that Hosana has always been so adorable. He is. He's a funny little cat, and actually him and Tamba, both of them, they're very inquisitive little cats. They like to sort of interact with their environment, and they've been really something special for us over the last year. We've had some amazing sightings of both of them, in particular Hosana, because Hosana, you know, he spent a lot of time on Djuma, and in fact the last 2 years, should I say, with him, and he's really provided us with lots and lots of entertainment, and he always looks incredibly good. And you can see he's taken to adult life and very well. The fact that he's got himself a carcass, he's got a nice big full tummy, and he seems to always be fat, this young man. He always seems to have found something somewhere. But like I say, I think he's going to be very sleepy. It's a very warm afternoon, and that means that for him, he's going to have to just rest in the shade like this. I'd imagine that only around sort of sunset time will he wake up and then start to move and probably go up into the tree and try and then feed off that carcass. I think for now, it's just going to be about heat management. So he's going to have himself breathing and panting quite extensively, as well as finding shade to try and stay as cool as possible. Now you might hear a whirring behind me at some point, and that is because there is a fan going on Ronald the Rover as well. So Ronald's also trying to keep nice and cool as well. And so we might actually deploy Ronald the Rover. Ronald the Rover is behind me at the moment. So there's old Ronald parked up against the dashboard. And maybe we'll introduce Ronald to Hosana, because of all the leopards we have out here, I am 100% sure that Hosana will probably react to Ronald the best out of all of them. So we'll see how that all goes a little bit later, and we'll see if Ronald and Hosana can make friends at some point. I don't want to do it right now. I just leave him to have a good rest. Only if he wakes up, then we'll do it, because I also don't want to surprise him and give him a fright. So if he's awake and looking around, then we might put Ronald down and see if Ronald can drive up towards Hosana a little bit. But you can see the flies are around as well. That's because he's got a carcass here, so that's going to attract a number of different little biting flies, and they're going to be landing on the carcass and then onto him as well, and he's going to be very uncomfortable for the next little bit, unfortunately, which is a bit of a problem. Now, Faith, I'm sorry I didn't get the name, but I know the question was about whether or not Hosana is dangerous towards Tandi's cub, so if you can just repeat the name for me and then we'll address the question. But in the meantime, I'll address it anyway. But potentially, yes, Hosana could be very dangerous for Tandi's cub. Where he is right now is not very far from the den as the crow flies at all. So there's a situation where he could be dangerous towards her. I think, though, Tundi would still be able to dominate him just a little bit. Now, sorry, that question was from Tom. Tom, I do apologize. I was busy talking about Rover, and it broke up a little bit, and I didn't get you. But, Tom, yes, I suppose he can be, but I think Tundi would still be aggressive enough towards him that he would get intimidated by that and potentially back off from that little cub. Also, we've seen with Hosana, most of the interactions that he's had with other leopards, he tends to be very kind of calm with the other leopards. He's not very aggressive. He tends to display sort of signs that he's submissive to them, and so I don't think we'd see a situation with him getting too close to the cub with Tundi allowing it. And if he did by accident, I'm pretty sure we'd see a situation where Tundi would get very, very aggressive with him and keep him at a sort of arm's length, and he wouldn't be welcome. So I don't think he's too much of a stress. Somebody like Mvula, on the other hand, is far more of a danger to that cub than what Hosana or even Tambo would be. And certainly you would find that Tundi wouldn't be very happy with him around. It also begs the question is that maybe this carcass is from Tundi. Who knows? It's very close to the den, and with the amount of dung that we've seen from Tundi recently, it's very possible that it could be her kill that he's just stolen from her. But time will tell as we spend our afternoon enjoying Hosana. I believe Taylor McCurdy is bumbling about the beautiful East African plains. Let's go across to her and see what else she's been up to over the last little bit. Well, I'm sure Ralph is very excited to be seeing the black rhinos of Kenya. It seems as though he spent quite a bit of time with them over the last little bit. But as you can see, Hosana has woken up a little bit. He's popped his head up and he's breathing very heavily at the moment. He's just tried to find himself a little bit more shade. I think where he was lying, the sun started to hit him a little bit. And so he's decided just to move slightly to the right into more shade and to be able to be out of the steamy sun that we've got this afternoon. The sun is very warm, and so it's the only real bit of shade that he's got close to the kill, and it's better that he kind of keeps moving around with it. But he seems to be very uncomfortable. He kind of can't find a comfortable place to sit. He rolls around a lot, and it's typical of a leopard that has got a full belly and is in hot weather. They do, well, most lion and leopards will be the exact same. So you'll find he'll lie like that for a bit, then he'll roll over onto the other side and then back the other way, and just keeps kind of doing that until he finds some semblance of comfort to have a bit of a nap and digest this massive amount of meat that he's pushed into his tummy. Now, this kill itself, I'm not 100% sure how long it's been here for. I reckon it's probably 2 days since it's been here. It's kind of been eaten quite a bit. There's only really the front legs and the neck that is left. The back legs seem to have been eaten. So I'm pretty sure that he might have either he killed it yesterday morning, or he's maybe, like I said earlier, stolen this from Tundi, and that's why he's in this area, because I believe he was seen, I think he was seen yesterday, or maybe the day before, he was seen in the shadow, and then he slowly moved his way up this side. So nice though, either way, not complaining that he's around and with us. So, Julia, you're wondering if any of these animals are in danger of overheating. So it would be a very, very big problem for cats because they've got fur, but they've got two things that they can able to try and kind of keep themselves nice and cool. And the first thing is what you're seeing there with him is that he is panting heavily. He's in a situation where he's breathing quite fast. His mouth will open and there'll be saliva on the tongue and in the mouth itself. And as he's breathing, so that is causing hot air to come out, which causes that water on his mouth and those liquids to basically lift off and to turn into a gas and evaporate, and that evaporation process causes cooling, which then sends the cooler blood in the tongue and the mouth back into the body and helps to control it. The other thing that is very, very dependent on is shade. So if they don't have shade, they're really going to struggle to stay alive, and they really have to kind of try and find shade in the really hot parts of the day. So even in the Kalahari deserts and places like that, they'll find a little cave, or they'll find a camel thorn that they'll get in underneath and then just try and find some semblance of shade to keep them cool. But panting is their biggest asset that they've got, and that coupled with the fact that they've got to try and then find a little bit of water as well, just to keep them hydrated, because when they're panting like that, they lose a lot of moisture and they then can dehydrate quite quickly. So yes, I suppose if temperatures were to get even hotter, if we had to go to, let's say, 60 degrees Celsius or 130, 140 Fahrenheit, then it could be very dangerous for these cats in this area. So, Scarlett, you're wondering what is the distance between Hosana and the other leopards in this area? Well, the answer to that, I have no idea, and the reason why is because I have no idea where all the other leopards are. So it depends day to day where they'll be, but theoretically, if we had to just look at the last sort of 2 leopards we've seen in this particular section, or 3 leopards, let's take it. So Tumba this morning with James was seen on Chitwa, which is from here, I would say, maybe just over a mile away as the crow flies. So that would be about as far as he is away from Tumba, and the 2 of them are often very close together. And then Tandi, where we last saw her with the cub in the den site, from this particular spot here as the crow flies would be probably half a mile, and Mvula yesterday would be even closer than that. It would be quite far, by maybe 300 yards. It's just across the drainage line that we're at the moment. So he moves around, and so do the other leopards, and everybody kind of just shifts around each other. But at any one time he could be very close. He could be a couple meters, or he could be kilometers away from some of these leopards. It's very difficult to know that without knowing where all the others are, and we don't know where Tingana is, we don't know where Shadow is. They could also very well be very close to us right now. So it's a difficult question to answer, but in terms of sort of space and how these leopards work at the moment, this particular section is very fluid. So there's a lot of males and a lot of females that are all vying for the same area. And so we're seeing a lot of crossing over of the territories. We're not having a situation where we're seeing one male establish themselves and both of them overlapping quite heavily, and then you're seeing Hosana, Tumba, Tingana, Mvula, Quarantine, and even this newer male, they're all overlapping somewhat to some degree as well. So there's a lot of kind of movement within this current section at the moment, but if it all settles down, then you'll find that they'll try and have as much space as possible, and then you'll see that we'll probably only really see mostly one male leopard and then maybe a couple of females. Wendy, I don't know. I mean, there's a long way to go. Hosana's not even 2 yet, so he's still not anywhere near being able to dominate a territory unless Tingana maybe dies and moves out of the area, and he then opens a gap for him. But I wouldn't be surprised that Quarantine then would start pushing this way. So he's got a bit of a tough time of it. There's a number of other males around in the form of Quarantine and this newer young male that's arrived here, as well as Tingana, Tumba. So he's got a lot of competition. It would be nice if he was, but in a way we actually don't want him to be territorially dominant here, and the reason why I say that is because if Shadow and Tandi are going to stay, and even Kuchava, he's then going to be mating with his own offspring, or his own brothers and sisters, and well, sisters. If he's mating with brothers, we've got a big problem, but if he's going to be mating with his own sisters, which is obviously genetically not ideal, but it does happen from time to time. So we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. But while we sit and see if Hosana is actually going to move or decide to go up and start feeding, let's go across to Taylor McCurdy, who I believe is having a frye and has found her jackals that she's been searching for so long. Well, he's doing what he's been doing most of the afternoon. He's having a really good nap, so it's all still nap time, and it's what we thought he would do. Even though we're spending time here and just waiting for him to kind of wake up, it's nice just to be around him. And I'm pretty sure that as the sun starts to get down, it's starting to cool off quite a bit now. It's not nearly as hot as when we first started. And of course, we also are in the shade now. As when we first started here, we were in the blazing sunshine, and it was incredibly warm. But now that it's starting to just cool, there's a little breeze blowing. I would imagine that he might wake up and then start going up and feeding. Maybe I would say at around sort of 6-ish. That's what I'm going to say. But until then, it's going to be all about having a good nap and trying to just kind of cope with this massive full tummy and the heat that is being generated by trying to digest meat like that, as well as the sun is gotten all around him. So it's going to be a sort of tough afternoon, and it's always the case with leopards is they have, they either in a state like Mvula where he's looking for food and is uncomfortable because he's looking for food, or you're in a situation where you are overly saturated with meat and then still uncomfortable. So it's a bit of a lose-lose situation if you're a leopard in the bush in the summer months. It's never very easy at all. Now, I know a lot of you have been probably worried about Mvula. I saw lots of you were talking about Mvula yesterday, and actually last night we followed him. We went out back after a game drive and went and had a look at him, and he was actually still looking for food, and he was on top of a termite mound and trying to actually get to some warthogs. So I hope he succeeded and eventually got himself a meal. Now, Tom, you want to know who is bigger, Hosana or Tumba? Tom, difficult to say. I mean, I haven't seen Tumba for so long now that I don't really know how big he is in relation to what Hosana is at currently. But Hosana having that sort of a little bit of extra time in him, and he's about 8 months older, he theoretically should be slightly bigger. The time that I did see them together at Twin Dams, Hosana was on slightly bigger than what Tamba was, but it was slight. There really wasn't much difference between the two of them at all. There was really, it was negligible. And so I'd be interested to know now. Hosana to me seems as though he's gotten bulkier. He's got this little dewlap that's forming. His head's looking a lot bulkier. So I would be interested to see Tamba. I know that James saw Tamba this morning, so maybe I'll have to have a chat with James and just find out what he thinks. But I think they're still fairly similar. I think there's a situation where they're pretty much similar genetics, and so I would imagine that both of them are on a pretty even keel. And because Tamba is slightly younger, maybe he will be a little bit bigger. Maybe Tamba just grew fast and Hosana is going to catch another growth spurt, or who knows what this sort of situation is going to be. But at the moment, fairly even. But I think Hosana would edge him slightly in weight and maybe even a little bit in height, but not far at all. Now, just now I was talking about Mvula, and we were sort of chatting about how he is and all those kind of things. Now, Mita, who is a regular viewer for us, sent in a poem about Mvula, and I wanted to read it to you because I thought Mita did a really good job, and I was thoroughly impressed by her poem and what she wrote. And so it goes along the lines of this. It's titled "The Old Man from Djuma." Now, it says, "Careful, careful, I must step through the savannah night and day, not leaving my scent hiding my steps. Watch out from Tingana, they always say. With age comes wisdom, I tell you, my friends. Careful, careful, I always step." So, Mita, I think that is absolutely wonderful, and I'm very, very glad that you wrote it, and I'm pretty sure if Mvula was able to understand that he would be very, very glad that you wrote it too. So I think that was a wonderful little touch from somebody to write a little poem about our old man. Now, Faith, sorry, you did send through a question, and I was busy reading that, and I didn't actually hear it. If you can just repeat it for me. But I do hope Mvula, just carrying on with the Mvula thing, I hope that he does find a meal soon and we see him getting back to his normal self and getting himself nice and big and bulky again, much like this young man. It's amazing kind of to see the difference between the two and just see how much more kind of muscle structure there is on the sort of hip area of Hosana as opposed to Mvula. So, Debbie, you're wondering what the smell is here right now. Well, Debbie, it doesn't smell like anything, really. There's no scent of meat. There's no dead smell. There's no smell of a cat in any way. There's no smell of urine or anything like that. It literally smells like normal air. There's actually not even really a scent of any of the vegetation, and it's quite weird because normally in the summer months you can smell something. You can normally smell either flowering plants or herbs that you've driven over, so things like wild basils or wild sages, or you'll have that smell of kind of dampness in the air from rain. But because it's fairly dry today, there's not really any of those smells. It's only when you actually drive over the grass that you get that smell of fresh grass. So I don't know, Debbie, if you've ever been anywhere where somebody's just mowed a lawn, you get that smell when you're driving off road at the moment. But sitting like this, very little. Could also be because the wind is coming over my shoulder and blowing away from me, so the smell of that carcass and the smell of Hosana, particularly mine today, is probably not as sensitive as Hosana's or many other animals out here. I went for a run today and feels like my nose is all blocked, which is not ideal. So it's hopefully maybe that's why. Dave, do you smell anything? No, it smells pretty normal out here, doesn't it? There's nothing obvious to our noses that we can pick up between Dave and I. Right, so we're going to carry on sitting with Hosana. Like I say, we're going to be patient with him. Hopefully he's going to give us a bit of gold and get up and sniff around, maybe even go for a drink of water in this hot weather, and we'll be here to capture that if it does. But while we sit and be patient, let's go back across to Ralph in the Masai Mara, and I'm sure Ralph is absolutely loving his time driving around the plains of East Africa. Well, I'm sure Taylor will have a lovely rest of her day, and hopefully she manages to get home safely and not get stuck in the mud. Now, as you can see, Hosana is still exactly the same. Nothing has really changed when it comes to our little prince. He's still very, 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 very tired, and I at least got an update since you've been gone on Tamba. So Tamba apparently, oh, nice big stretch from Hosana, but Tamba is apparently on Little Gowrie, and he's mobile northeast, which means that hopefully he's actually not far from Gowrie Main. So if Steve's in that area, if anybody wants to let Steve know, maybe Lou, if you let Steve know that he is moving towards Gowrie Main and towards sort of Chitwa, Gowrie Main area. Hopefully he'll pop out a little bit later. It would be so nice to have both the young boys on the same drive. It's been a long time since we've had both of them in the same sort of afternoon, and maybe then we can get a sort of size comparison between them, although it's difficult when you're not in the same sighting, or at least together in some way. But we're kind of at this stage on our own. There are 2 vehicles that are coming here, so I'm hoping that that's going to stimulate our surprised he stands up and finds himself in a little shady spot again. The problem is, for him, is that the shade is now beautifully on Dave and myself, so we've stolen the nice big thick part of the shade, and so he's going to have a tough time to find it unless he decides to come and lie right next to us, which will be quite interesting. Now, we'll probably decide, we haven't let him meet Ronald just yet, because there has been other vehicles with us, but we are going to, I think, have a situation where we're going to deploy Ronald at some point, maybe later this afternoon. I just don't want to deploy it when he's fast asleep and he gets the fright, so I want to try and push Ronald out somewhere far away and then just drive Ronald slowly around and see how he reacts to it. At the end of the day, we don't want to scare him or do anything else, but I think it would be such a cool view to have Hosana kind of peering into Ronald's sort of eye as well, and the 2 of them having a little sort of standoff will be quite nice. So of all the leopards, like I say, I think Hosana would probably be the most comfortable with this little moving Rover, and probably the most interested. Tumba would probably be also quite an interesting character to drive the Rover towards, because he'd probably also get quite intrigued by this sort of moving camera that is driving around with aerials. The only hesitation I have with using it with the leopards is that I'm not 100% sure Ronald will survive this incident, because you never know. Maybe these guys decide to start batting Ronald around, or think that it's a tortoise and then just absolutely destroy Ronald, which will be a very sad day for Ronald, and I'm sure James will be very happy with me if I do that. So we'll just have to play it by ear. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we might not, but I feel like of all the leopards that we have out here, this is probably the best one to try it with, and to see if there is any reaction, or it's just a normal kind of run-of-the-mill, almost like a vehicle situation. I surmise somehow, though, that there will be a reaction to it. I doubt very much that a leopard would just ignore it. It's something new, it's something foreign, and so either there's going to be a situation where he'll perk up and kind of try and move away from it, or there'll be a situation where he'll be very intrigued and then come in and sniff at Ronald itself. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm a bit on the fence about whether I'm going to use it or not, but we'll try a bit later. So, Philip, this is something we've discussed quite extensively in camp, and well, it's not extensively, but I've discussed it with a number of people in camp, and you want to know whether or not it would be bad for us to take Ronald into the den site of Tundi and have him explore that area. Philip, for me, I would say that we would try and kind of keep Ronald as much as we can away from there, and the reason why is the last thing I want is for Tundi to feel like something is threatening that den, and to then move the cub around, or to try and compromise that den in any way. So next thing a hyena comes in, or the cub gets curious, comes out when Tundi's not there, and then gets a fright and maybe runs away to a different place. Tundi can't find it again, so something like that. So I am very hesitant to use this anywhere near the den site. Also, I just don't think Tundi's the right leopard for it. I think she'll absolutely freak out if she arrived back, or if she was even there and this Rover started to drive around the den site. So I think it's not the right thing for Tundi at all, and I think we would be really probably doing ourselves a disservice. Well, not only ourselves, but her disservice as well. And I think the point of all this is to try and observe without causing any untoward damage, or to try and not freak out our animals. And I feel like we've made so much progress with Tundi over the last little bit in the den, and her trying to be a lot less aggressive towards us at the den, that putting a Rover in there and just making her uncomfortable and making the cub uncomfortable just doesn't seem like the right thing to me. Others may have a difference of opinion, but I just don't think it's the right thing. I think maybe if Rover was put on the road, if we saw her and the cub walking down the road and we just put Rover on the road and just left it there, and if they want to approach it, they can, that's a different thing. But I think going to a den site and being invasive into a den is certainly not the right course of action, for me anyway. Like I say, there might be differences of opinion, but that's how I would see it. Mila, you say you would love to see the interaction of Ronald and Hosana. Well, because you would love to see it, we will do it at some point this afternoon. Like I say, I've also got to, take into consideration the other vehicles that are with us, and so we can't deploy Ronald when there are other vehicles in the sighting, because obviously it ruins their photographs and all kinds of other things, and it's not what they came here for. So we'll have to be very careful with that, and it's only if the other vehicles leave will we be able to do so, but we'll definitely try, and we're going to try and see how he reacts. I want to try and start it also far away so that he has enough ample time to watch it kind of coming along. I don't want to just put it next to him and then he gets a bit of a fright, so we'll have to drive a little bit and then just plonk it down quite far and then let it go. But there's a bit of yawning there, so maybe it's a good sign that he is going to start waking up. You can see he's getting more and more into sun, and so I think he's going to have a situation where he's going to have to move fairly shortly and try and find himself a new place to rest, which might be a good thing for us. Maybe we'll try and move Ronald and put Ronald in a place where I think he might go. I was saying to Dave it would be really cool to drive Ronald towards where the tree is and then park it in a way that it's angled up, that we have a full view of the tree, and then imagine if Hosana came and jumped over Ronald to get up into the tree, and we had that whole jump from underneath a leopard, because that's not something that many people have seen at all. Be really cool to see. The problem is this tree is not really a very nice climbing tree, so I think Hosana will be in it in the space of about 2 seconds, if he even has to jump. I don't think he even has to jump to get into that tree, so I don't know if he's going to be any good for that, but you never know. We'll try and think about how we're going to do this and what we'll kind of come up with in terms of being creative with Ronald the Rover. It opens up a whole new world, really. It's an amazing little tool to have, and it would be really interesting. And just that angle that you get, it kind of always reminds me of, it must be something like a dung beetle must feel when we come plodding along, or a giant African land snail. I know their eye structures are not anything like ours, but if they had eyes like ours, that would kind of be how the world must feel to them. There's just kind of these massive things all over. And I had Ronald out earlier and I was looking at how the grass looks, and the grass is massive in comparison to the little camera. So, it would be amazing just to see what Hosana looks like from that point of view. Hello, boy, are you awake now? No, we're not awake. That was a moment of itching on the ear. So, Scarlett, you're wondering what Hosana means. It means little chief, and so he got that name obviously because he was part of the kind of royal family and Karula being the queen of Djuma. It just seemed right that he also got a sort of royal kind of title, and so he was named the little chief, which of course in the areas that we operate, a lot of the areas here have tribes in them, and therefore the chief is the highest member of the tribe, and so little chief seemed like a really good fit, and I like the name. I think it suits him very well, and I like the way it sounds, and of course it's original. There's no other Hosana leopards that I know about. Leopards the same, and it gets all very confusing after a while. So Hosana is a great name. I also like Tumba as well. I think Tumba suits him too. So the names that we've got for some of our leopards here really are quite nice, and I actually like them quite a bit. So hopefully, we'll continue to get a whole bunch more leopards, and they'll all receive applicable names in the future. Down, and you can see Hosana is immediately interested in the Rover, so I'm trying to see what I can actually see with Rover. Hopefully we'll be able to get a view of him. Hosana is kind of coming towards it already, so this is very cool. Rover's just next to me here, so there we go. So you can see he's slowly coming towards us, which is super cool. He's a little interested in it, and it's because we put him down, and as soon as he went down, Hosana decided, I want to come and see what this is. So we'll try and see if we can just move it slowly towards him and see what he does. There we go. We're just going to go slowly. Hello, Hosana. How cool is this? What cool. We get rid of that grass there quickly. How epic. That is so cool. Hosana, what is this? Are you not sure about this, boy? Now it's going slowly towards him because he's interested in what it actually is. Now, of course, guests have just arrived, which is not ideal. So we'll just try to go a little bit further because, like I say, here he comes. Look, he's going to come now. I have to sit right still because he's right next to me at the moment. And he's just coming in to check what's going on because our little Rover is here next to the car and he's looking at me a little bit. Yes, Hosana, what's wrong, babe? Are you not sure what this little thing is? And I think all the clicking of the cars has meant that he's decided, nope, he's going to lie down there and just watch the Rover for now. How cool is that? That is as cool as it gets, I think. I don't know how you all feel, but that to me is amazing. So maybe let's do one word tweet as to what you think about Hosana and the Rover, because that to me is the most ridiculous thing I've seen in a long time, and it was super cool to see him coming in, and I'm pretty sure he'll react with it a little bit more if it was able to drive around. Like I said, there's another vehicle here, so I'm not allowed to drive it anymore. We have to just keep it by the car, but I'm pretty sure Hosana would be very comfortable with coming a little closer to it, and certainly would want to investigate it a little bit more. But how cool was that? Is that the first time we've got a leopard on the Rover, Louise? I would like to know. I hope so, because the Rover has been a fairly static object around the dam, and so it would be super cool to see that sort of view for the first time. Now we have tortoise cam almost, as in Ronald's case, is what a tortoise must feel like when a leopard comes cruising up towards it. But that was very cool. And so he's not too perturbed by it at all. He's not worried, which is a good thing. I thought he might get a little bit kind of concerned by this little thing that was moving around, but he seems to be absolutely chilled with the fact that we have a little buggy moving around with a little camera on it. It's a typical Hosana. Like I said, of all the cats here, I would have thought he would have been the one to react in the best possible way. Now, I know that it's probably sort of, we wouldn't want to wake him up too much in the sun, but he's got himself a little bit of shade there just to watch Ronald, and hopefully he won't get too worried about it. I think if we had to move it a little further away from the car, he would have interacted with it a lot more, but like I say, there are guests here, so we can't move it too far, and they're taking photos of him, so we don't want to make too much of a mess with this. Avi, you say your one-word tweet is awesome. Now, I know I've got my back to Hosana, but like I said, I was trying to watch Ronald as well as not move too much, because we were trying to see if Hosana would come any closer, but it is awesome, isn't it? There's nothing better. I mean, the fact that technology today, it absolutely baffles me. Here we are sitting on a car, not only broadcasting from a vehicle, but we've got a situation where we've got a leopard just over my shoulder. There you go. You can see Hosana's right here. Rover is just below. So Rover is right over here somewhere, just behind the car, and is sitting there. And so you've got the situation where we're not only able to broadcast off a vehicle, which already blows my mind, but you've now got a situation where we're able to have a remote controlled feed that can kind of go around. It's absolutely amazing. And our tech team are a bunch of geniuses. Whatever they've done here and how they've managed to do it, Conrad and Jared, you've done a fine job, and this is certainly a very different view of a leopard than we've ever had before. Well, I think so anyway, and hopefully you all out there are enjoying it just as much as we are. You can see Hosana is not perturbed by it at all. He's looking at it as if to say, what is this? It's almost tortoise-like in its kind of movement, and so I suppose that's what he thinks it is. Maybe he just thinks it's a very different type of tortoise that has got a little red light in the front, and it makes a bit of a noise when it walks. But he certainly is somewhat kind of interested in it, and like I say, he's kind of watching it, but he's not really too phased at all. Coco Kitty, you say lepidabulous? Well, it is. It's about as good as it actually could ever be. Sitting there, panting away, is as good as it gets. How cool is that? It's absolutely cool. I want to show Dave, because Dave can't see from where he is. Dave, if you want to just have a little look around, so you can have a look through there. How cool is that, Dave?
Wow.
So Dave, we're going to try and clean the screen so that you can see better, but it's very, very cool to see. So Dave thinks it's awesome. Of course, Dave is a cameraman, so he would be far more intrigued by all of this than a lot of other people, because, you know, it's a cameraman's dream to get very different little shots, and so for us to see a little low-angle photo or video of Hosana is very, very cool. Now, hopefully, like I say, he decides to kind of just flop down, because if he does flop down, then we're in a situation where we don't have to stress too much about kind of moving the Rover. I think if we move the Rover, he's going to get very curious very quickly. He's still looking at it. He still wants to know what this thing is and why it's in his little area. But either way, it's very cool that we've got a leopard on Ronald. So Ronald meets Hosana, Hosana meets Ronald. Happy relationship going forward, hopefully. Dale, you say sneaky. Well, it is sneaky, isn't it? I think we were very sneaky to try and get it in there, but like I say, now I can't move it anywhere, because otherwise everyone's going to get very upset with me, particularly if Hosana moves. So we'll have to wait for all these other cars to get burnt by the sun and to move away, because we're now in the sun again, and so hopefully they'll all move. Hosana's got some shade, we've got Rover next to us, and hopefully everybody will decide to just kind of move and go the opposite way, and then we won't have to worry too much. We can sit here and see if Hosana will come and investigate Rover a little bit further. You can actually see before the guests arrive, I actually had Rover a little bit further away. I brought him back in because of the fact that he was sort of coming towards it. So there's actually a little tire track. If you look where his paw is, or a little bit down from there, right there, you can see the little tire track from Rover. So I hastily retreated Rover because I didn't want Rover to kind of be right out in a way and all the guests to be able to take photos of him. So I retreated Rover, but that's why Hosana kind of came in to have a little look. Hosana, are you not sure about this boy? Or do you not really care? No, doesn't really care, does he? He's kind of very sort of blasé about the whole thing. Feel like he's like, oh, you know, just another thing that I got to get used to. I've used to all the wild antics of the Safari Live crew, and so, you know, I've seen people doing all kinds of things, seen them on foot, and so a little Rover, well, what's that to get used to? That's nothing. So hopefully that will be the case. And like I say, of all the leopards to try it with, I think Hosana was definitely going to be the best option, and I'm so glad that we managed to find him. And it was funny enough, when I got onto Jigga this afternoon, and I said to James, I want to go and try the Rover, because I have a funny feeling I'm going to find Hosana or Tumba this afternoon, and I think either one of them would be fun with it. And so he said, no, actually, funny enough, Hosana is around. And so there we go. Now we've got the most epic view of one of the prettiest male leopards we have out here. Scarlet, maybe. It's possible he could smell the scent of human on it, and that's maybe what intrigues him, and maybe he'll get a bit of a fright with it. But I somehow don't know. I mean, obviously he's probably smelt human before. He's smelt vehicles, he's smelt, you know, he's been around camps where he might have smelt things. So who knows what his reaction would be. I think he's kind of unperturbed by it, but let's see. He's going to decide to maybe move. If he stands up, it's going to be so cool. He's busy yawning. If we go to the sort of Rover, if he stands up, there's a big yawn. How epic is this? This is so cool. Hosana, you are a legend. We couldn't ask for more, honestly. He's really being an absolute rock star, and he's kind of just watching me more than he's actually watching the Rover at the moment, so I'm trying to sit still as much as possible and not give him too much to worry about. Oh, you hot boy. I wonder if he's not going to move back towards shade. If he does, we're just going to leave Rover here for now. We're not going to worry about Rover. We'll drive off and leave Rover for standing. There we go. Look at that. How cool is that? That is so cool. And off he goes again. That is such a cool view of a leopard. I'm absolutely chuffed with that. There we go. Back to the shade he goes. He's going to decide, no, that's where he's going to sit and stay for now. Well done, Hosana. That was as good as it gets. How cool. Well, I think so, Dave. What do you reckon? Very cool, hey? A bit later. It would have been nice if we had gotten the timing right a little bit, because we could have maybe put Rover slightly more forward than what he was, but it's okay. We'll play around and we'll see. And this is definitely will not be the last time that we get to spend time with a leopard, and certainly not with Ronald the Rover. Expecting cat or any animal really. I think it would be quite fun with even a Nyala as well. I think, or something like that. I think it would be also very, very cool. What do you reckon, Dave? I think so. I feel like Ronald's not going to last long though if we keep doing this. I think we're going to have a situation where poor Ronald is probably at some point going to meet a sticky end between all these animals. But oh well, it's fun anyway. Let's see how it goes, and we'll kind of figure it out as we go along. Anyway, while we sit with Hosana and we see what else he's going to get up and what other things will entertain him, let's go back across to Steve, who's been, like us, waiting patiently for something to come out on the boundary.
Very patient indeed. We don't have a Rover, but we have a little bit of shade at the moment, which is fantastic. Folks, we had those buffalo. They've crossed northwest into an area we can't go to at the moment, and we've got on the radio in Chitwa to announce ourselves there, and the guys told us that there is, it actually sounds like Tambo is on his way in our direction as we speak. We can't go into Little Gowrie. He's moving in Little Gowrie now, but they basically told me just stand by here on the junction and wait a little while, and they'll keep us posted. But 15 minutes or so he might emerge out of the bushes, which is quite nice because it's still quite hot, which means he's moving in this heat. Maybe he's hungry or maybe he's thirsty. Who knows? I haven't seen him yet. I believe he's a beautiful little...
Well, he's now taking a break. He's resting. He's completely unperturbed by Ronald. Ronald is still sitting. You can see Hosana doesn't care in the slightest. So for anyone who was worried that it might chase him or scare him or cause any untoward problems, you can see that of all the leopards out here, like I say, Hosana is not perturbed at all. And it's why we did it with him. It was why the experiment was try and just see what the reaction was, and there certainly was no ill reaction towards it at all. He kind of was a little curious and came and had a little look, and then he walked away again and wasn't too fussed by it at all. So it was a pretty amazing thing to actually get a sort of view of that. It's kind of feels like it's a little different to what we normally see, and it also gives you an indication of just how big kind of Hosana is when he's standing looming over something. He has a lot sort of more of a bigger demeanor at that level than he does when you're looking at him through the normal cameras and you're kind of looking down on him. He's definitely looks and appears a lot larger from that. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting kind of process, and one that I don't know if it, like I say, it would work with any cat. I would certainly don't think I would try it. Like I say, with Tundi, there's no point. It's just going to end up in stressing her, hurting Ronald, and probably just not going down very well. But you know, with Hosana or Tamba, I think we're absolutely fine. I wouldn't try it with Tingana either. I think he would also not enjoy this at all. And certainly I wouldn't try it with lions, because you won't get it back, and it will just be completely destroyed by a number of different cubs. And particularly if you drove it into sticks or in kahumas at the moment, there's so many sub-adults. You saw what happened to 2 tortoises the other day with Steve, and for those who didn't see, 2 tortoises walked into this in Kahuma Pride, and well, 1 tortoise only left, and with a few scars on it to boot. So it's not a situation where you'll get a lot of you'll get very far with Ronald, so better just to leave it. But Hosana is back to his normal self. Like I say, he's just taking it very easy. He's very relaxed. He's not too stressed about the vehicles that are around in the area, and typical of him, he's got to be one of the most relaxed young male leopards I think I've ever worked with. Him and Tamba, both of them are incredibly relaxed individuals. You know, a lot of the time young male leopards, particularly when they leave their moms, can become a little skittish. They become a situation where they're a little kind of nervous of what's going on, and they're a little kind of sort of worried as to what is happening, and you know, sort of where they are within the sort of structures of all the other leopards, and so they get a little kind of skittish and move around and try and hide away from us a bit. But these two are just absolutely gold, and they, you know, they allow us these incredible views of them, and the stuff that Hosana has given us, and Tamba actually to a degree. Both of them have been in a situation where they've given us the most incredible views, and are very trusting of what we get up to. And so, like I say, I mean, we've walked into these cats, and we've done, you know, bushwalks and all kinds of other things, and they still are quite relaxed with that. So it's a pretty incredible sort of situation to have. We're very spoilt and very fortunate to be able to spend time with cats like this. It's not every day that you would get these kind of things happening, and certainly in my guiding time, it's been one of the most special things to have watched these two grow up over the last year. It's been a very, very, very big part of my life, and of, you know, kind of being out here. I think without the leopards, it would be a very sort of different way of life, that's for sure. Right, now I believe Steve is still on his feathered friend mission, still waiting for Tamba, and he's got something that might fly away, so let's quickly jump across to him. Well, we're still with Ronald the Rover. Ronald's in prime position now. There's Hosana in the background, so you can see they're quite close together, and there's no real stress from Hosana at all. He's just kind of looking over at Ronald every now and then, but there's no worries. So we're going to try and see if we can drive Ronald a little closer, because we can't see him from although Hosana looks like he's going to come and say hello. Are you going to come see what Ronald is? Let's see. We're going to slowly move Ronald. Well, welcome to those viewers that have just joined us for this live action broadcast from sunny South Africa. We have a leopard and a very cool new toy that we are trying to see how it works. So we have a thing called Ronald the Rover. Now, Ronald the Rover, as you can see there, is in the grass. Now, Ronald has got a camera attached to him with 2 little antennas, and they are going to go slowly towards where this leopard is and see if we can get a sort of squirrel or maybe a tortoise sort of view. Here he comes, look at this. Now this is a live broadcast, so you can ask questions or just tell us how you feel about the leopard coming to see Ronald in the comment section below. Look, there we go. There's Hosana, he's coming. to see him. Look, there's a little sniff from Hosana. So that's the young male leopard. He's just investigating. No, don't break my Rover. Yes, you can sit there. That's fine. Look at that. Isn't that the most insane view? And this is live. It is 100% live, which means that you guys can ask questions, like I say, and let me know what you think of this different view of a cat that is lying now. Like, he's a very wild leopard, and so he's the perfect leopard for this because he's the most relaxed of our males that we've got. He's still a young male. He's less than 2 years old, and he's very curious, and so he likes to kind of see what goes on. And so see, he's just having a little look around and just checking what it is. Of course, this is something new to him, and so it's more tortoise or something. Now we'll try and just sorry, Hosana. So he's just having a look. The problem is I don't want him to bite our camera and eat it, because if he eats it, then we've got a bit of a problem, because otherwise we're going to have bits of camera everywhere. But there you go. You can see now he's just watching and having a little look. And that is the most ridiculous view you'll ever get of a leopard. You can see he's also kind of just looking away and is not too phased by what's going on. So what we're going to probably try and do is just try and retract him a little bit, because I don't want him to be too close. Like I say, it was awesome that he came up to it. Also, there are other vehicles that want to come here that have got tourists in it, and so we don't want a camera that is in the shot with the tourists that are coming in to have a look. So we are in a reserve where people come from all over the world to come and see, and so I don't think they're going to want to see a little Rover in it. So we're going to just try and move him back a little bit and just see if he'll come slowly back towards where the car is. So we're going to leave our male leopard slowly but surely. So there we go. How cool is that? That is ridiculous. So it is as cool as one could ever possibly ask for. And like I say, it's just an amazing thing to be a part of, to be able to see this whole process in action. It's the first time that we've ever used it with a leopard, and the first time we've seen a reaction from a leopard. So we're just going to pull him back a little bit. So there comes Rover slowly backwards towards the car. Like I say, we just don't want to give the guests a shock when they see a little vehicle. Now, Peggy, you want to know how old this leopard is? He's about 2 years old now, so he's just kind of been left by his mom about a year ago, which was very early in life. It's a situation where, you know, he got abandoned a little early, but he's done super well. He's, like I say, one of our most relaxed leopards, and he's just such an absolutely epic animal to spend a lot of time with. And he's actually sitting here because he's got a kill at the moment. So he's got a situation where he's just made a kill and he's put it up in the tree, and so he's resting up in the shade. So that's why he's relaxed with us. And like I say, I'm just going to bring this little Rover back towards me, and it takes a bit of practice to get used to kind of panning and sort of moving everything. There we go. So, Robin, you're wondering if they ever take off with equipment. Now, Robin, we're not 100% sure, because this is, like I say, the first time we've ever tried this. We've never had a Rover before that has gone towards a leopard. The elephants absolutely love it, and they kind of will stomp on it every now and then. Either, but we've never tried with the leopard. So the thing is he might have gotten into a situation where he might have kind of made off with it, but now he's decided he's not too perturbed. The fact that it kind of retreated away from him, you can see he's just now happy to watch in the distance and just kind of have a look at what it is, and hopefully he won't come and chew on it. He doesn't seem too perturbed by it at all, but that is just the most insane view of a wild leopard you're ever going to get. Like I said, it's impossible to really get the view like that any other way, and it gives you an idea of just how big they are, and you can see just the sort of size of his chest, and his sort of head area is massive, even for a leopard that is under 2 years old. You can imagine if he becomes, 4, 5, 6-year-old leopard, he'll be absolutely huge. He's going to get a much bigger head and shoulders, and he's going to really become a massive individual. So that is really one of the most insane things I've ever seen, and I've been guiding for quite some time, but to get that view on a leopard is pretty unbelievable. Brenda, you're wondering what kind of kill he's got? Well, he's got an impala. Now, an impala for us is basically like a medium-sized, well, it's like a deer, so it's a medium-sized antelope. You can see it's draped over the branches there. He's probably been here, I would say, if not from last night, early hours of last night, then yesterday, because he's eaten the whole back end of it, and then up towards the sort of chest area. You can see some of the intestines there, so for those of you that are squeamish, it's best to look away probably now. So he's opened that up and he's started to feed off it, and that's why he's kind of panting quite a bit, is more because he's a little hot and he's a little kind of built up with heat, and all this meat is pushing up on his his lungs, so his breath is much shorter than what you would see normally. So that's why he's a little kind of panty, and he's also, like I say, trying to just kind of get himself a little bit more cool. And you'll see he's completely relaxed now. He's not even in the remotely worried about the Rover now that the Rover has retreated back slightly. And we can actually still see him with the Rover. You can just see his head kind of poking out the top of the grass. He's really not sort of too stressed. So let me try to get out the way there, Dave. There we go. So the Rover's right up against my tire at the moment, and it's just kind of watching him from there, and you can see him just panting away. And if he was concerned about this or worried about it, he, one, wouldn't have approached it, and two, he would have run away from it. And you can see that there's completely the opposite reaction from him. He's just kind of very relaxed with it. But that is just the most insane thing. Are you going to go to sleep? No, big yawn, which might indicate that he might stand up a little bit, or he's going to decide to have a nap in the shade there. It's been a hot day today, so I'm not sure that he's really going to be too active just yet. I think he's going to wait for that sun just to go down a little further. Right. That is all we have time for, though, on this action broadcast. I hope you absolutely loved a very different view of a leopard from Ronald the Rover. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. And remember, we do safaris twice a day for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. We'd love for you to join us on wildsafariLive.com. But until Right, so that's the end of our action broadcast, and how ridiculously crazy was that view of Hosana with his kind of face over and above near the Rover. It is absolutely insane to think that we can, like I say, not only do it with one thing, but we can do it with another. And so I think Hosana's coming just to see it again. He wants to just come and check it out. He's busy looking up at me at the moment. Let's go back to the Rover and look at that. He's just slowly kind of coming in and having a little look. Now, Hosana, you're not allowed to eat Ronald. Ronald is still a precious commodity, and James would like to use Ronald for the near future, particularly for the upcoming TV shows. But yes, you can sit right there. That is the most ridiculous view that we could ever ask for of a leopard. I mean, it's just insane to think. And not only that, the fact that he's not even a meter away from the car just gives you an idea of how trusting Hosana is with all of this. Like I said, it was the only leopard we were ever going to really be able to get this right with. But how amazing has that turned out? Now, I know some people might be a little bit against it and might have a situation where they think that we're messing around and we're not really, doing things right. But the thing is that vehicles at some point were also an invasive part of this, and it was, this is all to try and sort of see if we can get a different look into the lives of these animals and just try and see a different perspective of what they look like. And if an animal like this who's not too concerned about it and is not too worried can sit and watch, then, well, why not? I mean, look at that. Is that not so cool? If you ever wanted to know what it looks like to be a part of Hosana's sort of world and what he looks like and what his eyes see, well, there we go. You can see what it's like. And look how tall he is. I mean, this is a very wide-angle lens. It's a massively wide lens. And so he's just kind of having a look, and there we go. He's going to depart the scene, and he's going to lie down on the other side. Now, I'm going to try and just twist Ronald. I've got to just remember which side it is. So we're going to just turn Ronald a little bit and see if we can get Hosana. There we go. So Ronald is moved now and is now sort of looking at Hosana right now. There we go. So I just want to turn him a little bit more just to try and get, there we go. So there is the view of Hosana, who's got this pretty sunset behind him, watching Ronald the Rover. Yes, Hosana, what are you looking at me for? You see, he's looking at me as well, as if to say, what have you done? Have you brought your kids to work today? And have you decided that you want to show off your child? Because he's kind of looking at me as if to say, what is this thing that is walking around here and why is it here? But he seems to be very... Man, I wonder if he thinks Rover is a baby Jigger. Maybe he does. Hopefully Rover doesn't give us the same number of problems that Jigger does, but maybe that's what he thinks. I wonder if he thinks there's little people inside there. That would be also quite funny. I think I would absolutely love that if he thought maybe something was going on. But either way, he's completely not really... Now he's not really actually even looking at it. He looks at me more than he looks at the Rover, to be honest, which is pretty insane. So he's just heard somebody sneeze. That's why he's looked away. But This has just been the most insane thing that I've ever done. How ridiculous are these shots? This is amazing. So, like I say, for any of you that wondered what it was like to see a leopard from the ground and to be a tortoise, well, now you know what impending doom looks like when a leopard approaches you as a tortoise. So, very, very, very cool to see. Like I say, technology absolutely astounds me, and the fact that we can get views like this is just absolutely ridiculous. Right, though, unfortunately, that is all we have time for this afternoon. It's been just the most ridiculous afternoon, and our patience has paid off in terms of just sitting here and waiting to give Ronald a chance. And the fact that we sent Ronald out on its maiden voyage with the leopard, I think, couldn't have gone any better than it has now. Of course, we still need to retrieve Ronald, so we'll see. But anyway, from myself and from all the others that have been out and about this afternoon, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you tomorrow on the Sunrise Safari.